Hello you plonkers and welcome to episode 3. See, now I speak Italian as well. Of the DrewFooty Show, obviously joined by the footy part of DrewFooty. It's Jesse.
How are you, buddy?
I'm stumbling on my words, but that's because I've been overwhelmed with how many words have been in my comment section. 71 comments this week, baby.
Nice.
Growing the community and that. Thank you to everyone that commented. We couldn't get every comment just because we're so fucking popular that you can't go through them all. Thanks a lot for all the comments. It means a lot. And if you want to be on next week's episode, make sure you comment on this video. Without any further ado, let's get into the round 2 discussion topics. Let's have it.
Let's do it.
Long road, took a tumble down this black hole. Stuck in Sunday League, but I'm on levels with Ronaldo.
So Carlton Collingwood was the first game. Carlton again, through 3 quarters, looked very well. I think they were only like a couple kicks behind Collingwood heading into the fourth quarter. Ended up getting beaten quite easily in that fourth quarter.
Exactly. Every time I tip Collingwood, they've let me down. And last week I backed them in to have a big win, and they lost. So 0-2 on Collingwood this year as well.
So yeah, Carlton do have a high intensity that they play, and it just seems like they usually gas later in the game. But we don't want to discount Collingwood. They were pretty average in the first week, and they responded well. I think a lot of that was their big players stepping up. The usual suspects, Jesse. You know, your Brody Grundys, Jordan the Goeys, Myercheck had a big game, Taylor Adams, all the stars back to their best.
Carlton are pretty proud and ambitious club, and I know their fan base was absolutely filthy at losing this game, but the 2 games that they failed to really run out were also against Richmond and Collingwood. I know Richmond's the top dog. Collingwood have a lot of doubters, but they are a mature team, and I don't think it's as bad a loss as they're making out.
And we've got some comments, Jesse.
Yeah, so we do have a comment from Chris. Chris feels like the Blues can't run out games and can only play 3 quarters. Will this trend continue?
Yeah, they can keep the intensity going for 3 quarters. They, as I said, they just seem to be gassing quite early in games, but against 2 great sides in Collingwood and Richmond, that's probably expected, especially when you're a young side like Carlton.
They do have this alarming trend under Teague where they keep conceding massive 30-point swings. So look, it is a bit of a trend under Teague, but it's also not something that's uncommon with young developing sides. Now Carlton at that point where they're thinking they're going to take the next step, they need to start winning some of these games, and that's true. But I think we hit the nail on the head. 2 more mature sides in Richmond and Collingwood.
We've got another comment here from friend of the show, Jarvis DeLacy. Is Patrick Cripps overrated? Can get his hands on the ball, but isn't overly damaging as compared to other superstars. That's a huge call because obviously Patrick Cripps has carried Carlton through this stinky period in their history. Yeah, he seems like he is trying to do a lot of it by himself. You know, he's got Sam Walsh there now and Doherty's back as well. Maybe he can take less of the load and that could probably benefit his game. What do you think?
I'm going to answer this with a resounding no. I don't think he's overrated because, frankly, he's not playing to the standard that he once did. So he built that reputation for being such an elite player and he deserved it, but he's not playing to the same level he did. So he's just going through a downward trot. I'm going to say no, not overrated. He is a champion. Obviously, it's no guarantee he returns to that form. Some players never find it again. But yeah, no, he's just well down on his usual output.
Second game of the round, Friday night football. Big talking point was that holding the ball call. It was holding the ball. It just was. 100%. No doubt about it.
Pinged him, yeah.
Was it Zach Bailey?
Yeah, it was Zach Bailey, yeah.
He got done holding the ball just before, had no prior. Got Blixar's ball right in front of goal, and that cost them the game. Obviously, you don't want to leave the game in the umpire's hands. Brisbane had opportunities to kick goals and probably ice the game in that last quarter. Lions 0-2 now. We've got a comment here from Brandon Gardner who says, with an 0-2 start and border issues, where do the Lions go from here? Probably the worst start possible to the season for the Lions.
Probably, yes. I think on the upside, though, I think it would have been way worse for Geelong to go 0-2 in this game rather than Brisbane. Brisbane are playing a tough away fixture against, at GMHBA where not too many teams win at all. If Geelong had dropped that home game, I would have been more concerned than the Lions. Obviously, this week they're going to be playing a virtual away game against Collingwood at Marvel. If they do go 0-3, it'll put them under a lot of pressure, but I still think we saw enough encouraging signs from Brisbane that they're still got a real big stinky sniff this year.
I agree. I think the loss against Sydney was a bit of a lapse, but we've seen how good they can be at times in both games. So yeah, 2 tough losses, but I think Brisbane will be in the conversation come September still. Sydney, Adelaide. Sydney, again, showing very promising signs. Probably the performance you would have expected from Adelaide if you didn't see them play last week. And again, it was Sydney's young guns who have been impressed again. Golden looking very good. McDonald kicking a couple of goals, and Campbell as well, you said you were very impressed with.
Yeah. Sometimes the youth comes on earlier than you expect. I think we saw that in the... Gross. We saw that with the Bulldogs in 2016 where so much of their heavy lifters were like young guns who are arguably still coming into their prime now. I'm not saying Sydney's going to win the flag, but sometimes it all just clicks at once and it appears to be that way for Sydney, although it is early days.
We got a comment here from Chapman195 who says, does Errol Golden deserve to be the favourite for the Rising Star and could Tex kick 100 this year? How many has he kicked? 10 in 2 games?
I think 11.
That's bloody outrageous. Back to his best. No one saw it coming. Statistically and mathematically, 100 is on the cards. I don't think it'll happen, but good on Tex for rediscovering his form, which he was renowned for.
Walker is playing fantastically, and I think the new rules do sort of allow key forwards to sort of impress back on the game more so than the last couple of years. That being said, 100 goals in a year is just ridiculous.
Not going to happen. Errol Golden, what did you make of him?
Yeah, absolutely, really good player. Now with Matt Rowell out of the picture for at least half a season, maybe or a third of the season, whatever, he's got a golden opportunity here. But I think with his production and ability to find the ball and also hit the scoreboard, so he's kicked goals in both games. Yeah, I think he deserves to be the favourite.
The 4th game of the round, Port versus Essendon. I mean, I watched it, but no one knows more than Port. Then the Port pair. Let's give him a ring and see what he has to say about his power. We've got the sexiest man in AFL YouTube on the phone, Anthony Alessiani, or the Port pair as he's more commonly known. How are you doing, Chuckles?
I'm very good, beautiful. How are you?
Mate, I've never been better. How good have Port been? They are looking red hot. They've crushed the Cans in Essendon and North Melbourne, but you got to beat what's in front of you. How is it? Life as a Port fan a Port fan at the moment.
In good theory with your Port pen, it's cooking at the moment, so pretty easy going at the moment. 2 pretty professional performances, and on to a few good teams in the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to it.
We'll get to that soon. You've obviously got West Coast next week. We've got a comment here from our mate Big Smithers, and he's been talking up Zachy Butters. He said, "How good is Zach Butters? Despite being relatively slept on by the wider AFL media, he's honestly been our most impactful, if not best player over the last 12 months, and a big reason for our surge up the ladder." What do you make of young Zachy Butters?
He's one of the most underrated kids from that 2018 draft. He seems to slip down the lists of people when they're redrafting. But he's one of the talented kids that came from that draft, and I definitely agree. He's been one of the more influential players we've had in the last 24 months, really. He's been training with Robbie Gray as well, and that can speak for a lot when you're training with one of the best in the business. So I think that's one of the main reasons, and I love watching it. He's a beauty.
Huge additions over the off-season with Alia and Orazio, and they've just fit in like a bloody glove, mate, or like a nice new pair of socks. They're really loving their time at Port Adelaide, and I'm sure you've been loving watching those guys. What have you made of them being added to the list?
Well, I'll start with Alia. He's been, as a defender myself, it's just wonderful to watch him intercept every damn ball that goes down there. He's fitted into the backline nicely, pushing out Mackenzie, who was a star. Orazio's become a fan favourite quite quickly. His crumbing work is elite. I've thoroughly enjoyed the fact that he's been kicking more goals than I think anyone else on our list at the moment. So very good signs from both of them early on. I'll be keen to see what they do when we play the bigger and better teams.
And speaking of those bigger and better teams, you've got Freo in a couple... I'm just joking. Obviously, you've got West Coast next week, and Jesse is here.
I am. How are you, mate?
I've missed you, Jesse.
This is a potentially big potential statement game for Port Adelaide this week. You've probably beaten North and Essendon, who you could conceivably say are the worst 2 teams in the comp right now, even though you do arguably look like the form team of the comp. Looking at West Coast, you've battered us the last 2 times you've played us, so you must have a bit of confidence going into this game. But if I can ask the flip side of this, what worries you most about this game? Where can it all go wrong for Port? Just pump us with reasons that the Eagles are going to win, please.
I think overall, we haven't played in Perth for a good couple of years now, so obviously we know the Eagles dominate up this stadium, and even though the last time we played at up the stadium, we pulled your pants down. But I think it's going to be a battle of the midfield. We know West Coast have a pretty dominant ruckman with Nat and Newey, and Lysette's going to have his hands full. That's going to be the main challenge. Whoever wins the midfield will be the one to take this game out, because we know both teams have got great forward lines, and whoever gets the most supply down there will basically will dictate the scoreboard. So it'll be out of the middle, I reckon.
Great point.
I make plenty.
Predictions, Anthony?
I'm tipping Port by 21. I reckon another Easter special's coming Port's way.
I'm going to say Port by 18, so very similar tip.
I'll go Port by 20, because then it's like all in the middle and that. So that's going to wrap up this segment. Thank you very much, Anthony, for coming on. If you don't know the Port Pairs channel somehow, go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. And you've just started a new podcast, which is very good as well. Less is more on Spotify and all audio platforms. So go give that a listen. Thanks for coming on, Anthony.
Thank you very much for having me, Drews. Jesse, it's a pleasure to be on the DrewFooty Show.
The Saturday night game, St Kilda versus Melbourne. 2 teams that are evenly matched, probably in that 4th to 8th range on the ladder, you'd think, at the end of the season. Big game. Melbourne ran away with it in the end. You know, Freo probably gave Melbourne more of a test than St Kilda did. according to Cade McDonald. I asked him myself.
Yeah, arguably, I think that's a fair call. So we do have another question from Chris.
Shout out Chris, super sub.
Shout out Chris. How good could Cozzy Pickett be?
I was very impressed with his performance. He's got that Cyril sort of style, just runs through packs, no one can touch him, and then just bangs goals out of the wazoo. And he's going to be a player that's going to be a walking highlight reel for the rest of his career, it's looking like. Second-year player, and he's already making such a big impact in that Melbourne side.
Yeah, absolutely. Very talented, and kudos to Melbourne as well for plucking him. I think he was like pick 9 that year. They went with Jackson and Pickett, and Pickett was a bit of a reach going in about the 30s, but if they turned him into a really good small forward, it's looking real good. Something they don't quite have right now.
Melbourne, 2-0. Perfect start to the season for them. Gold Coast versus North Melbourne. Nah. Come on.
Yeah.
You think we're going to talk about that?
Blockbuster.
Nah. Hawthorn versus Richmond. There was no comments on this game, and it was pretty much just Richmond handling business. Dusty got best on again, I think. Potential Brownlow fancy again, Dusty. Yeah, Richmond just did what they had to do. Obviously, if you're pissed off that we're not talking about these games, there has to be comments on them. If you want to see us talk about your sides, you got to comment, and then we'll talk about them. But no comments on these, so let's move on to the next ones. And the next one makes me very happy. It was the Western Bulldogs versus the West Coast Eagles. How depresso were you yesterday after that game?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie. That was a real dagger in the heart sort of game. I felt pretty comfortable throughout the game, which might sound silly because the Dogs definitely beat up us. The Dogs really beat up on us in that second term. And I said to Dad, we're only 7 points down. So if we start playing well, we're actually in with a good shot. Mm-hmm. And the efficiency of us really kept us in the game while the Dogs played a really high volume style. When Jermaine Jones kicked that goal, I screamed so hard my neighbours could hear. And when Jamie Cripps kicked into the man of the mark, I was ready to send him to the gulag. But overall, at the end of the day, Bulldogs are a quality side, so we can move on from it, I think.
Dylan Schmidt said, holy moly, how good is the Bont? Very good.
Unbelievable. Unstoppable. I'm a big Bont fan. I have been for a while, but I was actually watching this guy and I think this could be the best player in the game. We were talking a lot about Dusty, and maybe Dusty has him covered so far this year. Probably watched the Dogs more than I've watched Richmond, to be fair. But we just couldn't do anything to stop him, like aerially. He kicks goals as well, and just physically. Maybe Elliot Yeo in the side would have helped. But I think if he's not now, by the end of the year, I think Bontempelli could be the number 1 player in the game. That's how highly I rate him.
And then the last game of the round, it was my Fremantle Dockers. We've won a game. I didn't see it coming. I thought GWS looked quite good against St Kilda, meant to be one of the better sides in the competition. They come over to Perth, and they just didn't show up. And the Dockers did. Our midfield really clicked. But our set shot kicking was terrible. It was like 12 goals, 21, or something absolutely woeful. We should have won this game by 50 plus points. Brayshaw, Chera, Sarong. David Mundy got 35 touches. The 35-year-old isn't showing any signs of slowing down. Some players that people outside of WA don't really know really shone. I thought Sam Switkowski has had a great couple games this season. Was out for all of last season, and he's come back, and every time he's on the ball, he makes something happen. Michael Frederick had a great game, and Lockie Schultz I've been very impressed with as well. And my morale is up again. The Dockers have won. We've got Carlton next week, which is a huge game. So if you want to see our preview for that, make sure you go watch Just the Tips, which is on Jesse's channel.
It is funny to see the stark contrast for your body language during the Melbourne Fremantle game, and then you've just torched GWS and you're like a new man again. You're like, Fremantle's going to win a flag, win a derby this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think you feel better about the Melbourne game now that they've just knocked off St Kilda? You only lost by 22 points.
Yeah, we just played terribly. I feel like if we played how we did last week against Melbourne, it would have been a much different story.
Fair enough.
We played horrible against Melbourne. Sort of puts it into perspective a bit though, because Melbourne are a great side, so maybe we did make it harder for them. It was a very scrappy game. I'm never going to die, and Free are going to win the flag. Alright, so that's going to finish this episode of the DrewFooty Show. We're going to go film Just the Tips now, so if you want to see our tips for next round and the preview of every game next round, go check that out. Link in description. And we did a Cool World podcast, but we did that a couple weeks back, so go check that out. That'll be in the link in the description as well.
Good stuff, buddy.
See you next week, guys.